John can proofread like, dude, I don't ever want John proofreading my stuff. John Combest can catch a proofreading error at like 70 yards like a sniper. That dude, he knows, and don't question him. If you write something and John Combest corrects it, don't argue. He's right. You're wrong. If John corrects you, thank him publicly.
Welcome to the PJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the PJ Show. PJ Show.
And John's prowess also extends to telling a radio station owner when he's off the air.
What do you mean, Brad? Oh, that's right, last night, right, Brad?
You know, John, I had one of those meltdown days where everything went wrong, and we had problems with Westplex, and I went out there and reset all the stuff, and I'm sitting there in the transmitter room saying, okay, everything's looking good. I go down the street, literally down the street. I pull up to the gas station to pump my gas, and John texts me, hey, 107.1's off the air. And I go, no, it's not. I just left the transmitter site. I punched up my radio, off the air. What had just fixed had broken again. So John, not only is the proofreading whiz, but he's the engineering whiz as well, too.
Well, but you got that fixed, Brad, because so I was leaving dinner with a beautiful offspring. And then we were listening to our favorite station, which is 107.1, and I noticed it was off. And then I sent you a video just to prove that you were actually off the air. And but you got it fixed eventually, because we hopped in the car this morning, and you may notice if you hear the sound of cars in the background, the bus is running late, Brad. So I am broadcasting from an unnamed St. Louis County bus stop. Anyway, but you're back up on the air, and I heard Westplex 107 up and live this morning.
Well, not only did I get the text from John, I got a text from Scott Faughn saying, if John says you're off the air, you're off the air. And I said, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that, dude. So
it just goes to show, we've talked about this before, Brad, but there are so many things that go into a radio station that people don't understand. And it's like running a restaurant. Everybody thinks they can run a restaurant or a bar, and then they have to actually deal with supply chain issues and licenses and keeping the lights on. And it's remarkable what you do, Brad.
Well, nowadays, it's practically any business is like that. I mean, and the government, you know, we'll talk about that maybe in B Block. Trump is like hitting the ground, not running, hitting the ground at Mach 1. I mean, because all the things that have come out yesterday, to me, it's like, whoa, you know, and it's to the point where it's like, me as a business person, I've been in business for the past 40 years, worked for myself for the past 40 years. Every year, it gets harder and harder and harder from a number of different reasons, but the government doesn't help. The government keeps piling on more regulations and more rules and jump through this hoop and jump through that hoop. And a lot of times you think, okay, why do they do that? Well, because quite honestly, I think to a certain extent, some government officials have to justify their jobs. They have to come out with new regulations and revised regulations. And we're going to change this. And we're going to, like you and I talked about the crazy thing with the crap transmitter site. Once upon a time, we had a lake there that I could do anything I want with. Now I can't, because what's the rule? You know that rule, the EPA rule, what's called the rivers of the country, or so. What is the name of the rule?
Yeah, waters of the United States, right?
Waters of the United States, which essentially the EPA declares if you've got a low spot, and I'm not kidding when I say this, if you have a low spot in your backyard, and when it rains, you get like maybe 50 foot, by 50 foot, body of water. According to the EPA, that is under their control. Am I kidding, John?
No, you're absolutely right, and that was an Obama administration rule, and that was one of the things that was rolled back, if I understand correctly, by President Trump.
Right, and I don't think that Biden put it back in, but it just got out of control. And the whole idea was the EPA had control over navigable waters, and their option was if you could stick like a dinghy or a kayak in the water and you could row from side to side, it's navigable. And I think most people, when you hear navigable waters, you think of like the Missouri River, or the Merrimack, even obviously the Mississippi, places like that. You know what I mean? To me, that's a navigable body of water. Even a lake. Lake of the Ozarks is navigable body of water, but a low spot in your backyard that fills up with water, rainwater, when it rains real hard is not a navigable body of water. But according to the EPA, it was, at least for a while. Okay, that's John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T.
Now, Brad, let me interrupt. I think we could all disagree about what a navigable body of water is, but I think we would all agree that you are a dinghy. I mean, I think there's government consensus, both in the scientific and regulatory community, that Brad Hildebrand is a dinghy.
So when that woman says she liked my dinghy, she wasn't talking about my boat? Is that what you're talking about then?
I just think you're a little dingy at times, Brad.
Okay.
You know, I'm going to move away from calling you gimpy and just calling you dingy.
Oh, thanks, John. I go from being a gimp to a ding, right? Okay, that is John Combest, who is just full of compliments. And what he does is every single day for the past 23 years, he puts together his website, johncombest.com. It's like the Drudge Report of the state of Missouri. He puts all sorts of different stories in there, and you just click on it, takes you to their source. Could be a website, could be a Twitter feed, something like that. But what we do is we start the show off with this guy right here.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what does he do?
Now on with the countdown.
And we start off with...
In third place.
Name the artist for me, Brad. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
If you want to take some X with me, we'll ride through the county without insurance. So why must I live this way? Hey, I'm almost 50. Do you know the artist, Brad?
That's the revised version of Nelly, right?
That's correct. Yeah, Cornell Haynes, Brad. He has some good news. Did you happen to see any of these headlines, Brad?
I did. And, once again, I said all along that this whole arrest was bogus. And once again, I'm not defending Nelly. I'm just going like, why is it that if you win money at the casino, you have to, have the proctologist take a look at you? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, most of all because you're known for smuggling, right? I think they call it, well, we won't say that. I think that's why they give you a proctology check at the casino, Brad. But you're right, and it seems as though, at first glance, it seems as though Nelly might have encountered a bit of an overzealous police officer. You think that's fair to say, Brad?
I just think the whole thing's bogus. Here's what I don't understand. You go to the casino, you're there to win, okay? The casino hopes you lose, okay? If you win, they should pat you on the back, give you money, and walk you out the door. But instead, apparently, when you hit a certain amount of money that you win, you have to go back into the back room. They have to have a little talk with you and have to look at your ID and stuff like this. Isn't that how the whole thing started?
Yeah, I believe so. And so apparently Nelly says that he won a lot of money back in, this is at the Hollywood Casino in Maryland Heights. He won a bunch of money, and this time, compared to other times, he had to go into a back room and get a background check where they found that there had been an arrest for driving without proof of insurance. And then also he allegedly had 4 pills of ecstasy on him at the time. Now, the news of this I have a link up to it today, is that Wesley Bell, prosecuting attorney, who's still prosecuting attorney through January, has decided to not press charges. It turns out that through Nelly's attorney, Scott Rosenblum, says that the county has decided that they will not prosecute, that it's not worth pursuing. The drug charge is gone. And once Nelly produced proof that he did indeed have insurance at the time of his original citation, that will be dropped as well. So Scott Rosenblum wins again, Brad.
Well, don't get me going about that. I've told you my personal experience of getting a ticket for not having proof of insurance when I had a proof of insurance, but he wouldn't accept it because it wasn't an actual card. I think that's a bogus. And see, once again, that is, and I'm going to say things, that is part of the whole thing that came out of the Ferguson situation. Some of these munis get ticky-tack with these stupid tickets. You know what I mean? And to the point where you get a ticket for not having insurance. You get a ticket for that. You don't, and the how you cure that ticket is, it's sort of stupid that he didn't do this. He could have his attorney done it. You show up in court and you show the judge, Your Honor, I didn't have this with me at the time. Take a look at the expiration date. You'll see that I was fully insured on the date this incident occurred. And 9 times out of 10, the judge will say, "Okay, court costs, get out of here." You know what I mean? That's pretty much it. But
you fought the law, and the law didn't win. You had that exact same case. You showed proof of insurance. And was it the prosecuting attorney came over and slapped you on the back and said, "Let's talk about it, pal"?
No.
And then you got it wiped off, right?
No. If you want to talk about, we'll talk about it in the second segment. It was a guy hit me. A guy hit me on I-70. I'm stopped in traffic going west toward Art City Expressway. Him and his wife were going, oh, you know what? I'll tell the whole thing in B block. I don't want to take up your time.
When you start a sentence with somebody hit me,
Yeah.
I usually think of J.C. Corcoran's fist.
Yeah, the sound of his fist smashing my face. Okay, number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
We might finally have some resolution on one of the topics that has confounded the mathletic brain of Brad Hildebrand, and that is whether or not counties can stack their own tax on top of municipality taxes when it comes to cannabis. And a panel of judges, I should say, Brad, yesterday ruled that no, St. Louis County, St. Charles County, any other county cannot stack their own tax on top of municipality taxes. So we finally get a little bit of clarity there, Brad. And according to the 3-judge panel, when the law defines a local government, that law actually means the municipality, not a county. So those additional taxes that were layered on top, that were stacked on top of Florissant, St. Anne, other municipalities, Brad, those are not valid. The only local tax you have to pay to get high is your local municipality. Bad news for counties, Brad.
So what happens to all that money they collected? They have to return it to the customers?
I think it goes to the KSLQ Debt Relief Fund. I think that's where it goes.
No, but seriously, I mean, can you apply for a refund or something like that?
I don't know where that goes. I'm sure it goes to a very safe spot. When you look at St. Louis County and St. Louis city government, you know that they're fantastic stewards of taxpayer money, Brad.
So he says that with tongue in cheek. So officially, does that take effect immediately? If you walk in today, if you go to like a place in, like one of the munis in St. Charles County or the munis in St. Louis County, does that take effect today that there's no longer a county tax on there?
I believe so. And now I should also indicate here that I should also report, and these pieces, by the way, are brought to us by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the Missouri Independent. Both of them are up on my website today. St. Charles County Executive Steve Ellman says that he's already talked to Sam Page's office and they plan on appealing. I believe he said they plan on appealing. They plan on taking some sort of recourse. This was actually in the Court of Appeals, so I'm not sure if there's another route for them to take. But the counties obviously are not happy here because they had viewed this for a long time as essentially a never-ending source of recurring revenue.
Can't they take it to the Supreme Court in Missouri, Missouri Supreme Court?
I guess they could. Yeah, I don't happen to have the news pieces in front of me, but
was this a state appeals court or a federal appeals court? I think I just lost John.
It was a state appeals court. Okay, hold on, Brad. I'm sorry. The bus did not come today, so I am making an alternate route and following traffic cop directions here. I'm sorry about that. I will cut this out of the YouTube version, and I am waving to people. Okay, there we go. Sorry, Brad.
Okay, as long as you're not smoking dope in the line at a Francis House School District, you're okay, right? Okay, so once again, I'm no fan of the constitutional amendment process, but this is a perfect example of you stick these things in the Constitution and nobody can touch it. If it were regular legislation, they could go back in and change, modify the law and spell this out that the counties get the money, that the cities get the money, yada, yada, yada. But that's not the case, and it's just a mess, right?
That's exactly right, Brad. And, once again, this goes to show that the writing of some of these provisions could probably be a little bit tighter, considering the amount of money they raise and the money they spend. You think they'd make the language a little bit tighter.
But see, here's where they screwed up with this whole marijuana thing, because if they would have had Bradshaw's version of the marijuana law, it would have said that Brad Bradshaw is the ultimate arbiter of this, and that whatever he says, no matter what, goes. And see, they wouldn't have this problem. They wouldn't have to go to court or anything like that. That Steve Ellman and Sam Page would call up Brad Bradshaw, "Hey, Brad," and he would say, "Okay, boys, this is the way it's going to be. Thank you, Brad." And then everything would be done, right?
That was actually a provision in the original Brad Bradshaw proposition, was that he would be named czar. And also, before he gave a ruling, before he walked in everyone would congregate. They had a ladies' chorus that would sing, "Here come the judge, here come the judge."
What we're talking about is when the marijuana thing went to the ballot. Well, there were three competing. Weren't there three competing ballot initiatives on the marijuana law when they did the repeal of the ban on marijuana? Was three, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were several that were circulating. You're right.
And Bradshaw, that name sounds familiar, he's the guy you've probably seen on TV who is an attorney and also a doctor, and he tells you that if you were wrongfully injured or something like that, he's going to sue you. And when his version of the law came in, he put himself in there, and I'm not kidding, am I, John? He specifically said that he would be the czar of the marijuana industry in Missouri, right?
I think that's pretty much what the current marijuana crop of consultants have done, although they just didn't give themselves a fancy title. I think they said, we will make the rules, we will make the laws, and you will like it.
Right. And if you don't, move to Illinois. Number one.
The number one.
One of our favorite guests on one of our favorite shows yesterday, Will Scharf, Trump attorney Will Scharf, was on the Andy Fry show yesterday, breaking down a whole lot of topics like lawfare. Well, he started with what it was like to be at Mar-a-Lago that night, how Will knew that the president was going to win early on. I should say the former president and soon to be returning president was going to win, what numbers he was looking at that told him that. Interesting analogy brought up by Will Scharf yesterday, which was he was discussing the whole FEMA controversy as it relates to people skipping over Trump supporter houses. The analogy that Will made was that if you were a street level drug dealer and a prosecutor came to you and you were facing hard time, chances are a lot of those guys end up squealing. They end up literally narking out their suppliers to get a reduced sentence. Will compared it to this woman at FEMA who once she was put in the spotlight, she said, whoa. This is an entire department-wide policy. This wasn't just me. And Will thinks that there's going to be a whole lot more squealing, so to speak, as it relates to FEMA folks.
Now, to me, the interesting thing on this wasn't it several of the big publications, like New York Times and stuff like that, when this allegation originally came out, they said, oh, that's not true. There's nobody in the government that would not help the Trump people. That's when you're in need, you're in need. Wasn't that like the Times and things like that came out and said that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Brad.
And then guess what? They found out it was true. Sort of like the Hunter laptop thing. Once again, why do I become so cynical about media? It's stuff like this. Because darn well the New York Times people, the people that work there, not the journalists, the activists, they want to make it look like, oh, the government never did anything wrong and nobody would bother Trump. There's conspiracy. You guys are all nutty. You're fruitcakes because nobody would do that. When people need help, they need help no matter what their political background or political preferences. Yeah, right. Correct?
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?